By God's providence, the church has all the gifts it needs in order to flourish. Now, sometimes we might think we're not seeing a lot of that flourishing, but the gifts are there. The problem is we receive the gifts, but then we have to unpack them. Those gifts are not going to be evident in the church and in the world without us cooperating with the Holy Spirit. It's like we've received the capacity for faith, but then we have to make the decision to accept that and to act on that. And that's about discerning our charisms. And charisms are really a language of evangelization. They are the way in which we make Christ present to those around us, whether it's through the charism of teaching or administration or service or healing or intercessory prayer. And there's lots of examples that you may yourselves know of how these gifts work in the community. But then you might ask yourself, well, how do I know I'm using a charism? And there's actually three aspects to that. The first is, how does it feel? How do you feel when you're using a charism? And it's true to say that it's a feeling that you actually fit, that you're doing something that you feel really comfortable with, and that you actually feel a flow in the activities that surround it. And it feels contemplative, it feels prayerful, it feels joyful. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need rest like every other human being, but while you're actually using that gift, you have this sense of elation, if you like. But then how you feel is not always a good measure. There has to be some objective measures to whether it is a charism. And the other two things we look at is it effective? If you have a charism of teaching, are people learning? If you have a charism of encouragement, do people feel better after they've come to you with their life problems? So that the charism will do what it's meant to do. But then the other side is affirmation, and you want to expect that people recognise that you're using this charism. Now, here in Australia, we're not particularly good at affirming people in the good things they do, but usually when they make a mistake, we'll let them know. So we're not very good at overtly affirming people, but we can also have a sort of a passive affirmation where if you have a charism of encouragement, as I mentioned earlier, you might find a lot of people spend encountering you and telling you their problems because they need you to hear and to encourage them. Or you might find, if you have a charism of hospitality, there's lots of people who come to your house and tell you they feel really comfortable coming to your house because they feel welcomed and they feel as though they're part of your family, so to speak. So you'd be looking at, how does it feel to use a charism, whether it achieves what it's meant to achieve, and whether you're receiving affirmation. And there's a lovely quote I came across from Hugh Jackman, which I think gives a good example of how it feels to use a charism. He said that when he is acting, particularly on stage, before the performance, he offers the performance to God, and then he surrenders to it. And he says that is the most euphoric feeling. It is like falling in love. So a charism puts you in that sweet place.